Hello, and good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome, first of all, to this live webinar. It's a series between Kinaxis and 4Flow Consulting. My name is Fergus van Niekerk, and along with my colleagues, I'll be moderating part of this session today. But before we get started, a quick reminder that we'll be taking questions at the end. So please use your chat. I think it's on the right-hand side of your screen, and feel free to ask questions via that forum. So we have what I think is a fantastic session lined up and a fantastic guest speaker in David Thomas to talk with us today. David's had a phenomenal career. I think, David, a little under 40 years with the Ford Motor Corporation, working across three major operating environments and regions, and I guess countless different product lines. So it's a real pleasure to have you join us and talk about this subject today. David is also joined by Ralph and Mark from 4Flow Consulting, both of whom have years of experience in advising automotive OEMs and suppliers on exactly the subject of this webinar, which is, of course, volatility and disruption, and no better year for it than this one. So thank you, guys. Great to have you both with us as well. There's also a software element to this session today, which will run for a short period of time. And it will really highlight how these challenges can easily be solved using various modern supply chain techniques. But before we ask David to talk about his experiences and navigating volatility and disruption, I'm going to pass to Mark, who'll introduce the webinar series in a little bit more detail, as well as expand on the concept of concurrency in supply chain planning. Mark, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Fergus. Thank you very much. Welcome to everybody to our series for automotive. And so we all know that the automotive industry is facing currently fundamental changes. And COVID is just one of many challenges. Automotive supply chains are changing dramatically. So there are new technologies, customer preference changes. We have environmental regulations which have to be considered. New business models are on the rise. All that leads to increased uncertainty, complexity, fragility of supply chain. Concurrent planning is a way how to cope with all these challenges. Concurrent planning means that you get rid of the old way of sequence planning. Now, if I go to the next slide, here you see the old way of planning, which is a sequence way. In the sequence, in the way of sequence planning, salespeople do their demand planning, giving the input to the production people. They do their planning, they give the input to the logistics people and the purchasing people. They do their planning as well. And if there's somewhere a change, the whole planning starts. And this is slow, and this is not agile at all, because it is cascaded. So the new way of planning is concurrent planning. We symbolize this way of planning by the gearbox you see here with the different wheels. If one wheel turns, all the other wheels are turning simultaneously. Let's make an example. If, for example, a supplier announces to you that he has to reduce the production output because a machine has broken down and he has to cancel delivery orders, you see the impact immediately on what it means for your inventory, or what does it mean for your production program as a customer for this supply. And then you can do also planning in a concurrent mode, that you react, make a new production plan. You see immediately the impact of your solution on all the different supply chain areas. To make concurrent planning happen, you need, at the end, three things. You need concurrent planning processes. You need a concurrent operating model, because it's a lot about collaboration. and you need a concurrent planning platform like Rapid Response from Kinaxis. You will learn more about this later. In the upcoming webinar series, we will show you many use cases in the area of automotive, how concurrent planning helps you to optimize automotive supply chain. Let's have a look on the series. Let's have a look on this slide. So in the upcoming series, we prepared a quite wide range of different topics for you. We have more short-term planning topics like today's sessions, how to deal with uncertainty and disruptions. We will talk about long-term planning challenges, strategic planning, how to make an optimal plan for your global production footprint. We have the very interesting and hot topic in the automotive industry, how to plan the introduction of new vehicles. And we have the topic S&OP, supplier collaboration, how to include environmental regulations in your planning, and the aftermarket issue. So it's a lot of to come. But let's start with the session of today, how to manage volatility and disruptions. For this topic, we invited David, who has almost 40 years experience at Ford, and he will tell us how concurrent planning helped him to solve disruptions in his operations day by day. So I hand over to you, David.
Great. Thank you very much, Mark. Let's move to the next slide, please. Well, first of all, hi to everybody. It's great to be able to talk with you all, albeit virtually, given our current circumstances. Nevertheless, I'd like to take you through a very brief journey of our project to move from disparate planning to global planning to specifically manage volatility. So a little bit about me very quickly. Next slide, please, Mark. As has been mentioned, I've just retired from Ford Motor Company after nearly 40 years service in 24 different positions around the world. If you look at my career, basically on a functional side of things, I've had half my career, more or less, in corporate business strategy, strategic planning, and about half of my career in national, regional, and global business operations out in the field, working with dealers, plants, and many other operations around the world. Geographically, I'm British. I started off in Ford of Europe and spent roughly a third of my career there, then moved to North America, and after North America, South America, combined about a third of my career, then moved to Asia Pacific. I was based in Hiroshima, Japan, and then moved to Beijing, and then Shanghai, China. Next slide, please, Mark. In terms of leadership positions, you see there at the bottom, I started off in Europe and ended up in leadership positions across sales and operations planning. I did all the advertising, product marketing, and variable marketing for Ford across Europe. I ran the Formula One team, the World Rally Championship, and the overall global Ford Motorsport operation for a while. Then I moved to the US to manage global product marketing strategy. Then I moved to Japan and I ran Mazda Motor Corporation operations around the world outside of Japan, although I also ran the dealer body in Japan because Mazda owned most of its dealers in Japan. That's when Ford Motor Company obviously owned Mazda. Then moved to marketing sales operations back in the US. Then I ran all Ford operations in Canada, Mexico, and South America. and then ended up as Director of Global Capacity Planning, because if you look at those positions in yellow around the world, all of them involved me initiating, developing, and implementing sales and operations planning and business management planning systems, albeit not global, but certainly regional for those operations. So next slide, please. So I ended up at World Headquarters running planning teams across the business regions. And because of my background and because of a number of exogenous factors that I'll come to in the next slide, I was asked to set up the next generation global sales and operations planning system for Ford, because we were running into problems, because we essentially had a regional view of our business around the world, and we needed to connect all these regional businesses so that we were able to respond to volatility and disruptions which were global in nature, and we needed to move quickly. So the leadership team asked me to go and effectively sort this out, because, next slide please, Mark. You may recall the last major exogenous event we had was the 08-09 Great Recession. Ford Motor Company survived that and we came out of that very quickly and produced a strong performance in 2010. We were similarly going to do the same in 2011, but we got hit by a lot of capacity constraints, because during the Great Recession, a lot of supply-based capacity was taken out, and we started to run into supply constraints that stopped us meeting demand. And then that, on top of the fact that Ford traditionally, as I mentioned, had evolved regionally, regional leadership, regional operation and P&L responsibility. And at the time, we basically had regional products, regional R&D, regional manufacturing, and so on and so forth. And the administrative functions that managed those regional things were also regional, with different calendars, different governance processes, different timetables, and so on and so forth. My view, as I set about tackling this challenge, was that obviously all of us have demand forecasting tools, whether those are manual or algorithmic or anything like that. We all have tools to forecast demand. My view, even though we all think we're the best at forecasting, is that we have to assume that each of our forecasting ability is no better or no worse than our competitors. And particularly when so many events are not forecastable, like the Great Recession, like COVID that we're currently going through now, and volatility will always occur. And the competitive edge, in my view, is not having the best demand forecast, because how do you dimension that? The competitive edge is responding the quickest to disruptions that will inevitably occur. Control what you can control, because responding more quickly to these disruptions will drive competitive performance. So getting to the concurrency that Mark talked about earlier, through our digital transformation journey and globalizing our S&OP process was the key goal. Next slide, please, Mark. Now, because of our regional structure, it was very difficult for us to globally consolidate information coming from the various regions. And also those regions felt ownership, rightly so, to manage their own regional manufacturing and supplier capacities. But as we developed and as Ford became more global as an operating company, clearly those manufacturing and supplier capabilities in each region were supplying global customers. But because of the regional structure, it was very difficult to not only contain, but to optimize company performance with ongoing multiple demand and supply changes across all the regions, whether that's from the supply side on manufacturing and supply capacities, or demand side because of shifts in legislation, taxation, customer preferences. We needed to have a way where we could monitor the changing capacities across manufacturing and our key suppliers and match those concurrently with all those changing demand priorities around the world. And allocating constraints when there were problems, as there always were, often became contentious and always became very time consuming, because it's very difficult to allocate out a problem across global operations when the identification of the data to resolve that problem lied in regional silos. And of course, every region had different operating patterns by plant, different lead times, clearly from regional suppliers to global customers. And each plant had different cost structures, and each market had different product profit margins for those products that they sold. And across our business, we were managing essentially 650,000 different products as we defined them. I'll come to that in a moment. Across around 400 plus plants of various sizes, thousands of suppliers, and hundreds of markets as we defined them in Ford. So a lot of challenges that led us to do this project. Next slide, please. How did we set about executing this project? Well, overall, it was 6 years in total. The first 1.5 years were due diligence. We looked at 7 leading global supply chain technology suppliers. You'll all know their names, shortlisted 2 for POC deep dives, and ultimately ended up selecting Kinaxis and Rapid Response. We then set about building some low-cost prototypes to model the more complex business processes within our global operations, which then allowed us to dimension some of the challenges that we were facing, and also allowed our Kinaxis colleagues to get up to speed and see some of the system operating parameters that Rapid Response had to deliver. Now, while we were doing that, clearly, we wanted the business teams around the world to help develop the system that they would be the users of. But of course, they all had day jobs, and we didn't have hundreds of people sitting around waiting for the next project to come along. So I used external agency teams to work alongside the business teams. So there was no business disruption. The business teams did their day jobs. The agency teams worked alongside of them to learn the business, see the requirements, and then developed detailed technical specifications. You'll see where the teams were based there: Detroit, Sao Paulo, London, Cologne, Shanghai, and Chennai, the logical locations. And quite honestly, from my perspective, the main reason why I wanted to get local regional teams external to Ford was that they had local language capability. I mean, yes, we minimized travel. Yes, that was cost effective and time efficient. But the key issue was that when we had a business problem with the business team in Brazil, they could resolve it in Portuguese with the local agency team that I managed. So all the detailed technical work was done in local language, and very little was done in English, quite frankly, as the global language for Ford at that time. And in fact, we only really resolved, and everybody could speak English, of course, but we only resolved to using English when there was a real problem that required a trade-off, which the world headquarters team that I had in Detroit managed, and that was a relatively small team. So next slide, please. So the business teams clearly wanted the new system to reflect what was currently done in the most part. They were experts at their job, they were good at their jobs, and they wanted the new technology to help them do what they were doing. But of course, rapid response has capabilities that the business teams obviously didn't have. So we needed to balance changing the system, rapid response, to fit current business processes with changing business processes to take advantage of the advanced capabilities of the new system. And that was a delicate and challenging balancing act, because all our regions pretty much did everything differently. So we had a kind of unwritten rule with everybody. If the regions could agree amongst themselves a particular business process, whether it was the demand side or the supply side, then we pretty much went ahead and spec'd that out and built it. If the regions didn't agree, and that was often the case because they operated so differently, not just because of the evolution of their regional operations, but they operated in different countries, clearly with different tax regimes, different legal regimes, different lead time regimes. Clearly, business processes were different. And where the regions couldn't agree, then the project team decided, which was always a fun and interesting exercise. So our view was, as we embarked on the detailed spec, that we would end up with a spec that was pretty much aligned to all the regions, but not the same as any. And that was going to be what we thought the kind of trade-off to get a global system. However, the wonderful thing as we got into the latter stages of the project was that the flexibility of rapid response, which from a personal perspective is quite a phenomenal platform, it allowed us to effectively specify systems and technical capabilities to match unique regional requirements, but yet simultaneously run in a global system. So we ended up pretty much, with one or two exceptions, but pretty much getting what I thought was the best of both worlds. We were able to give the regions something that they could recognize as being reflective of their current processes, albeit with many advanced capabilities and transparency into the global data set. But at the same time, in the center, I could run it as a global system through a governance process. And it really was quite exciting to get to that point, because we thought that implementing a global system across so different regional operations was going to be a change management nightmare. Not only that, but on top of it, we wanted to get a global solve of our data, right down through vehicle, engine, transmission, body style, series, driveline, emission level, plants, lines, days, JPHs, operating patterns, key suppliers. We wanted to have everything tied together and get a global solve in 20 minutes. Bottom line, by the time we'd finished developing the system, we got to that. Next slide, please. So what did that enable us to prepare for? Well, we were able to move from disparate regional systems and spreadsheets that didn't align or exchange data. I couldn't even count the number of spreadsheets that were sent between operations by email when we tried to address a supply constraint. When we had constraints, there was data transparency to everybody, and we could get that very quickly, and we were able to develop the correct supplier requirements and more accurate supplier requirements that took into account all the different lead times through the tiers. We had global reporting standards. Clearly, there are packages that allow you to get that. And we were moving to a global monthly operating calendar to get everybody on the same calendar. The key thing from my perspective is that the system allowed us to have transparent global targets and transparent rules that the regions followed in setting their production requirements, their inventory levels, and how they were able to maintain their supply lines or manage constraints when those supply lines were disrupted. So clearly we had disruptions, but when we did, we were able to see them quickly. We were able to resolve them pretty much automatically through a series of preloaded rules that people were agreeing to. And then we had the time to run multiple scenarios so that we could manage profit optimization and all the trade-offs required between profit, supply, maintaining dealer profitability in key markets, supporting launch events when a constrained situation came along. And in the system, we were therefore able to manage not just the one-year operating plans for all the different plants, but the 2-year S&OP. Ford basically operated a 2-year S&OP. And I also managed the 5-year business plan and alternative scenarios for the 10-year corporate plan in the same global system. So that's a real quick run through. I apologize for the speed. That was the journey that we completed, the reasons why we set out on the journey, and how we went about not just managing the project, but implementing the end result focused on achieving some of the key targets that we had. So I look forward to being able to answer some of your questions later on in this webinar, but thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you very much, David. Now let's have together look on the technology. We've prepared for you a short demo where we show some of the functionality of rapid response, how these can support companies to manage disruption. We kept it quite general to get a first impression. So in case you have a question afterwards, please don't hesitate to contact us. So let's start with that.
Hi there, this is a quick video to give you an overview of rapid response from Kinaxis. I want to go through what makes it different, what is unique about rapid response, and why that makes a difference. I will then take you through a quick overview of the solution itself, give you let you see what it looks like, some of the visualizations we've got in there, and then we'll go through a quick scenario where we're going to simulate a supplier disruption to see what that means with respect to the end-to-end supply chain, looking at the impact that would have on customer orders and what the impact would be on finances. So let's get started. So rapid response has got a unique capability, which is concurrency, and it's unique because that's how the system was designed from the very start. If you think of the way that processes have been defined and solutions have been built over the years, they tend to be very siloed in nature, both the business processes and the technology that supports those business processes, where we've got each of those individual business processes carried out in sequence, and something takes place with respect to demand. It is then integrated into a supply solution. The supply solution runs some batch processes to create a result, and that trickles through the process, which means that there's a lot of latency, a lot of delays between each of the steps, and once you get to the end, the information that you started with has changed and is not up to date. So it's very difficult to get a full picture, and also very difficult to get to be able to simulate the effect across all of these individual silos. And rapid response is unique in that it is one solution, and it is concurrent, meaning that it is always on, is always creating a feasible and balanced plan. If there's any changes to demand, any changes to material availability or capacity, the system instantly recalculates and replans to provide something that is feasible, and the planners can see the numbers and trust the numbers, because it is always constrained and is always looking at the latest visibility or the latest view of the plan. So at that, let's go into what the scenario is that we're going to see. I'm going to have a dashboard that I can see an alert. I'm going to look at what that alert might mean, then create a scenario so that I can simulate what the effect would be. So I want to create a quick environment where I can simulate what that means, whatever it is, look at what the impacts are, and then look at what particular options I might have in order to try and resolve that, see the financial impact, and then solve the problem and promote the scenario into production so that we can execute. So at that, let me jump into rapid response. And here we have a dashboard. So the dashboards within rapid response are completely customizable. They can be the end user can change what they want to see with respect to scope, what widgets they have on the screen. They can see multiple tabs across the top here, and I'll go into them in a minute, but you can visualize the information you want to see in multiple ways through a heat map tree with a geo map underneath it, where we can see information with respect to individual facilities to see how facilities are performing with respect to some of the key metrics that you want to see, and get that visual trigger when you have any problem. So very easy on the eye to be able to see specific things that might be of interest. We can have tables on there. We can have different views where we can see the gap to an S&OP plan, maybe some information with respect to material shortages or overloaded capacity constraints, be able to look at what the revenues are by individual product groups, and I've got my message center here that I'll come back to. So I've got multiple tabs I've just created on this particular dashboard, just to give you an example of some of the things that we can visualize within rapid response. So this would be one that I would particularly like if I was a planner way back in the days when I was a planner, be able to look at what the differences are between today's plan and yesterday's plan, or last week's plan, with respect to changes in orders and orders at risk. Be able to see some trends and also see the financial impact of that. Be able to see over here a quick kind of tree map visualization of any constraints that I might have, and be able to use the color formatting so I can see here's a particular resource that's going to have a problem in a few months or a few weeks time. Be able to see days of inventory type information, so I can, again, using different colors, I can highlight, the pink here is where I've obviously got the risk of some stock outs, and the blue is when I've got a sudden rush of material giving me excess material. So I've got some strange things going on, that material is arriving that's maybe too much, but I would investigate that as a planner, and I can drill from any of these dashboards right into the individual worksheet that I might want to look at to analyze further, what the particular issue is. I've got some good visualizations on inventory. Again, I can drill into any of these charts to get a view of, in this case, some excess inventory risks. I can see the individual parts, what site they're at, who's the responsible planner for them, how much on hand I have from a financial point of view, and I can toggle that to whatever unit of measure I want to see, and I can see what is surplus, what is slow moving, what is obsolete. So I can tag that so that I've got that information instantly available, and that will be a dynamic piece of information, because as demands change, bill of material change, and products move in and out, be able to see that as a live report within Rapid Responses is very valuable. So that's the second tab. Third tab, I've got some ability to do some segmentation type analysis. I've got some data quality type analytics here. So the system is continually validating the quality of the information, and we have the ability for the system to define business processes and then measure the adherence to those processes. So if I click on Stephen G here, I can see here's all of the activities that I'm due to participate in as part of the S&OP process, and I can see the ones that are late. So the system is continually monitoring so that the processes can improve. Maybe this particular individual needs a little bit more training, needs a little bit more time, maybe he's overloaded. So it gives that type of visibility and insight, which is very valuable. So let me go back to my scenario that I want to take you through. So I've got an irate buyer here, which has sent me a message, and I can open up that message, and what it's saying is, due to the COVID situation that we're all suffering, I have a supplier, Happy Castings in India, and they've been really devastated by the current crisis, and they're going to reduce the amount of inventory or the amount of product that they can send me. So I want to be able to simulate what that means to me as a manufacturer of finished goods, and what I can do about it. Now that I have the information, what I want to do is I want to try and investigate what to do about that. What scenarios that I can start investigating. So I've got a thing called a task flow that I've created that are all of the detailed steps that I would need in order to go through the process of investigating this particular part. So I can look at the network view, and this gives me a representation of what Rapid Response is covering. So it's one solution, and it's covering all of the nodes in the network, the entire network across the complete organization, including business partners if you want them to be included as part of the planning of your supply network. So we've got DCs, customer facing nodes, central DCs if they're applicable to your particular environment, through to the manufacturing facilities, subcontract manufacturers, all the way through to the purchase parts that are all modeled as one complete process within Rapid Response. So what I want to do is I want to check the parts affected by this particular problem. So I know what the vendor is called. So I can do a very easy search. I can see it's Happy Castings, and they're providing transmission castings. There's 4 of which they're providing. So I want to really now investigate. Now I know what the parts are. I want to know what the products are that this is affecting. Is it one product? Is it a family, etc. So I can drill into the bill of materials, and I can see here this transmission casing is used, and this is giving me a full multi-level where used. So I can see across multiple sites, I can see what the end products are. So I've got an L1500-11, -21, -12, and -22. So it looks as if it's only affecting that particular product group, the L1500, which is great. Next thing I want to do is I want to check what the current order status is. So this is my entire order book. So all of my actual customer orders, my forecast, all of my demands, I can see in the system. And I can toggle here, just to make this easy to see, I can toggle to between all orders and late orders only. So if I click on late orders, I've got none at all. So that's perfect. So I want to look at my planning sheet. The planning sheet gives me my demand supply balance, a time phased view, if you will, where I can see graphically what my demands are, what my available supply is, safety stock if I've got it, and what my inventory balance is. I can change the view. I can see this in weeks in the short term, or days in the short term, then weeks, and then months, whichever, and we can customize that with telescopic type views. So let me just reduce this all the way down to 0 to make it a little bit easier to read. So I can see that I've got my total demands, my total supplies. I can see I've got a balance of stock, so everything is looking pretty nice. I don't have any orders that are late. So what I want to do now is I want to create a scenario that'll give me a sandbox, if you will, where I can edit anything that I want to see the impact. So I want to do some what if analysis. So I'll create a new scenario. And a scenario takes less than a second to be created, and that gives me an environment that is completely secure. No one knows that I'm in here, so I can do anything that might be confidential. Any what-if analysis that you want to carry out, we can do here. So what I want to do in this scenario is I want to simulate maybe a reduction in the quantity that's being provided here. So I'll highlight that range, and this is my scheduled receipts. So these are all of my expected receipts of material from this particular supplier of that transmission casting. So I'm going to edit the range. Their capacity is reducing by 3. So I'm just going to divide that number by 3, click on OK, and as soon as I press save, the system is going to completely rebalance the entire supply chain with respect to material demand and capacities. And I can now see that I've got a pretty big negative balance here. So I do have some problems. I can go in and see, I can go into my demand orders and look at that particular scenario, my COVID scenario. And I can see now that I've really got a lot of orders that are affected by that change. And I can see the system has exploded a schematic that I can see that full level pegging all the way through with color coding, and I can see where the problem part is. So very, very powerful capability. So now I know what the problems are and who's affected by it and what the financial consequences of that reduction. I can start looking at scenarios to resolve it. So I go back to my planning sheet here. I've got an alternative source that's currently disabled, so I've got a very expensive alternative for this particular part. It's actually double the price, so I've got it disabled. If the price was very similar, maybe I would have it automatically enabled, so the system would automatically solve the problem. But as it's a significant price increase, I've got it disabled, but I've got the visibility that this is an option. So what I want to do is I'm going to turn that to buy. Press save and see what happens. So the system is now looks as if it's utilizing that additional source, and I can see that the balance is now in a much better position. If I go back to my order book, I can see that has in fact solved the problem. And if I go back to this planning sheet here, what I can look at is the spend by supplier, and I can see now that this expensive supplier, this expensive alternative, is going to cost us quite a bit more money. We're buying 213,001 items from this new vendor at this particular cost, so it's quite a significant increase in cost. So this is maybe a scenario that I would collaborate back and get approval for, and before it is promoted into production. So that's how very quickly within rapid response we can assess the impact of a disruption, or look at a demand increase or a capacity reduction, engineering change, anything at all that you want to simulate with respect to demand, supply, or even costs, see what the impact is from a financial point of view. So that was a very quick overview of rapid response. Hopefully it wasn't too fast and it was meaningful for you. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact someone from Kinaxis. Thank you very much for your time.
So let's start with the final part of our webinar, now where you have the possibility to ask questions. But before we start with that, we will show you the answers on the questions we asked you when you did the registration. Let me share something with you. So now it should work. So the first question we ask you, what are the most common disruptions you have to deal with? And the majority of you answered that this is unexpected fluctuations of demand. This is not quite surprising, but interesting. So let me ask the first question to you, Ralph. What do you think, why fluctuations of demand is causing our guests the most headache today?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Mark, for this question. I hope everybody can hear me and the mic is working well. Is it okay, Mark? Yeah, David?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, thank you for this question, Mark. So yeah, it is clear that this question is of major interest for us, and also that this answer is given from the audience. So if you look at unexpected fluctuations of demand, we can of course have a look at in the short-term view and also in the long-term view. For now, I would like to focus on the short-term view. If you look at short-term fluctuations of demand, of course, the effect is coming rather soon. It's having immediate effect, let's say. And therefore, for example, the situation must be analyzed immediately, and also actions need to be decided very soon, and also need to have a feedback loop whether they are, let's say, whether they are necessary and whether they can be, for example, controlled, and whether they keep the situation then under, let's say, under consideration. So if we look at this from the short-term view, we know that we need to have a transparency about what is the situation and what are the outcomes, and therefore we need to know what is the right decision. So I think also what, for example, the presentation of David has shown rather clearly that there are already some tools in place, some processes, and also the organization which can measure and which also can live and handle this situation. And I think this was really closely and clearly shown by David. And therefore, yeah, I'm keen, and I also want to know more about the situation, how, for example, David has handled this type of unexpected fluctuations of demand in the short term.
So thank you, Ralph, for your answer. Let's move one slide further to see what your answer was on question 2 and 3, where we asked you how do you solve today your disruptions, and how do you rank your your own capability, the capability of your organization to act in disruption cases. So more than 2/3 said that you have to solve disruption still manually with a high effort, and you rank yourself low agile. Maybe then the question goes to you, David, from your long-lasting experience, what can be done to get less manual and to get more agile?
Yeah, these numbers are no surprise to me, and I'm sure everybody on this webinar, of course. And this is where we were through most of my career, in fact. The challenge is always getting enough data to be able to not just identify the problem, but specifically construct the right solution. Problems are always going to happen, whether they're demand problems or supply problems or exogenous challenges. They're always going to happen. Collecting the data to allow an assessment and then the right optimized response has to come from a transformation of the business where that does not happen automatically. Yes, we can do Excel spreadsheets. Yes, we can send them around by email. Yes, we can consolidate them, but time consuming and very manual. When you've got instant visibility to a problem and a set of agreed rules that allow that problem to be allocated out in an acceptable manner to parts of an organization whose performance and profitability are dependent on the allocation of those problems, then you can respond quickly. And I have found clearly that the quicker one can respond, the less impact there is on the business, pretty much obviously, but more importantly, the more optimized the response can be. Because if you can run multiple scenarios and balance the trade-offs between maintaining operating plans in plants versus maximizing profitability in key markets, that doesn't happen automatically. That requires alternative scenarios to be run. And that can only be done if the information is pulled together in one place and you have a set of rules against which you bounce that information. So with something like rapid response as a flexible platform that contains the data, those pie charts can be reversed and significantly reversed so that one becomes agile in how you react to problems, whether they're demand or supply or exogenous.
Thanks. Thanks, David. And there we have a question for you, Fergus. We had a short demo of rapid response, and the question to you is this just a solution for large scale OEM and big suppliers, or is this also a solution for mid-sized companies?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. A great question. Look, I think changing times are, warrant changing answers to that, really. So historically, Kinaxis has of course been seen as a large legacy provider, the likes of Ford, but absolutely not. We do an increasing amount of work today with smaller organizations, and if we define what is small, then around the 1 billion in revenue mark, right? So I think the thing that we've seen from COVID is that every organization, no matter how big or small, has been impacted by shortages in supply or challenges with supply, or even challenges with demand, right? So we're starting to see a lot more organizations, even sub 1 billion in revenue, take an interest, and we can absolutely find a solution for those organizations. So yeah, not just big and small, but everyone.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Fergus. Then we have a question to you. Yeah, I have two, maybe first to you, David, and then to Fergus, you again. Maybe in case of, in a disruption case where some part or suppliers are constrained, and you have to allocate these parts to ensure the production. You are limited. How you would do that, that you get the most, that you don't stop anywhere the production line. Also how to deal with limited parts in a disruption case globally.
Yeah, well, almost a daily problem, I would suggest, for many large companies. And clearly, one needs to have the demand information to see what the requirement for that particular part is. But also, as we built out rapid response, we kind of built it in 3 chunks. The first chunk was all the demand side: product, market, region, so on and so forth. The second chunk was the supply side: plants, lines, flexible or fixed, key suppliers, key constraint points, and importantly, lead times. Lead times between key suppliers, lead times from suppliers to plants, and lead times from plants to the markets that they supported. And then the third chunk was kind of the rules, the profit margins, and so on and so forth. So when there was a problem, a supplier had a catastrophic failure, piece of equipment went down, like in the example, capacity was cut by 1/3 that we just had demonstrated. The second chunk, the supply side, gets adjusted obviously very quickly, as was shown in the demo. The demand side is in, because you've already got that, the chunk 1 I mentioned. And then you go to the third chunk, which is, okay, I got a problem. I can see where my profitability is. I can see which markets need this component. I can see the different lead times between the supplier, the plant, and the market. And I can see the constraint that the supplier has and how it's going to impact the operating patterns in the plants. When you can see that, again, like in the demo example that we were shown, you can set up a scenario literally by clicking a button. And then you can model out, if I did these markets first, then those markets, what does it look like in profitability? But those high profit markets might have long lead times from this particular supplier. So that has an impact on cash flow. In the meantime, other markets have got inventory levels that are falling below those needed to support profitability in the dealer body, etc., etc. All those can be seen. All those things can be modeled. If you can see them and model them, then with a set of agreed allocation rules that can be manipulated in line with regional requirements, you can get the optimized solution. There's going to be pain. If you're short, you're short. The question is, how do you minimize the pain, maximize the profit, and keep the business running at levels that support safety stocks, plant operating schedules, albeit at lower than ideal levels? And that was what we built to be able to see. If nothing's going wrong, you don't even need to look at things. Our job is to manage problems and fix those problems quickly and profitably. And to do that, you need the capabilities that we've seen in the video and that I've just outlined.
So thanks, David. And let's come to the last question. Because we're running out of time. And this question goes to you, Fergus. It's about the integration of rapid response into the ERP system. How is rapid response integrated? And for example, if you do a simulation, how you get the results back to the ERP system to bring the results to execution?
Yeah. So great question, Mark, and we could probably take the next 3 days to talk about integration, right? We've got about 20 seconds. So to keep it really short, rapid response will support both batch or real-time integration. Probably in excess of 85% of our customers run on an SAP backbone. So we have a huge amount of experience in integrating into SAP. And it really then comes down to the way the individual customer wants to manage that information, that data flow, right? But I think the important thing for the purpose of this answer is we support multiple different types of integration, and we've seen multiple different types out there, depending on the industry, the client, the amount of data. So yeah.
Okay, thanks. So thanks to everybody. Thanks to joining the first webinar of our automotive series. Special thanks to you, David, to be our guest. So yeah, hope to see you next time. So bye for now.
Indeed. Thank you, David. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Ralph.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone,
Thank
for joining.
you, everybody. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.